Hello, this is Norman Michaelation. I want to share with you some of the myths that the legal system has that most people aren't aware of. Most people buy into the rhetorical flourishes of justice system and equal justice under law and how everybody is treated the same under law. And that's rhetoric. In other words, it sounds very nice. It's for a specific purpose. It sounds very equalizing, and it is also false. You have heard similar adages, you only get so much justice as you can afford. There's some truth to that too, but it's not 100% true. But this is 100% true, what I'm about to say. There are 7 myths that I can think of off the top of my head here, and we'll consider this to be part 1. That people believe about the so-called justice system, what I think is more accurately portrayed as the legal system. It's a system of laws. The laws don't always make sense. The laws have little to do with justice or truth, which is what people think they are. That's not to say that they aren't just sometimes or they aren't interested in the truth sometimes. They are. But not all of them are like that. And we can just look at our history quickly. In the Constitution, it was enshrined, one of the greatest laws that we have, saying that a black man was, 3/5 of a person? That was the law at the time. Nobody thinks that that was a good law today or the truth, or I shouldn't say the majority don't think that. It had nothing to do with justice, certainly, but that used to be the law. So that's just one of many examples of the law. So I'm going to refer to it as the legal system, not the justice system. So the first thing to understand is the rhetoric surrounding it. And anybody who's fallen victim to the so-called justice system, as I have, as many, many people who are incarcerated and are still incarcerated have, it's nothing to do with justice, no matter what they did. So the idea that courts are a remedy. People think that they're going to go to the court and they're going to get a remedy, that the court's going to solve the problem and they're going to apply law to your case. And the truth of the matter is you're going to get a remedy, but it's not going to be the remedy necessarily according to law. It may be according to the discretion of the judge. And even more sickening and disheartening, sometimes you'll get a remedy that has nothing to do with the law, nothing to do with what most people would do. It has to do with the special relationship the judge has with the prosecutor and with the court officers and whether they believe your story. They may decide they're not going to believe your story, and you won't get a remedy that's anything other than what the judge feels in his heart based on his or her own prejudices. That's something that you don't hear very much. You certainly don't hear about it in Law and Order or any of the TV shows, but it is in fact the truth. You have a right to remain silent is a very, very common right and belief that people think. And really, it has more to do with what the police say when they're arresting you. They'll read you what's called the Miranda rights, and they'll say, you have a right to remain silent, and anything you say can and will be used against you. That's the important thing. Don't think you can say or not say, you can climb up when you want or whatever. It doesn't work that way. If you immediately, upon being interviewed, say, I reserve the right to an attorney before I have any discussion on the matter, or I assert my Fifth Amendment rights, or anything where you make it very clear that you're not going to speak to the police under any circumstances, that cannot be used against you. The police can't say, well, Your Honor, we asked him questions and he said, I'm not answering them, so he must be guilty. They cannot assert that. But neither can you play games with it, where you say a little bit and then you don't say anything, you say a little bit more and then you pull back. That will work against you for sure. One that always makes me laugh is when people go and they say, you'll hear people say this, and forgive me if I'm kind of making fun of somebody, I don't mean to, but you'll know the type. Well, I'll just go to the judge and I'll just tell the judge, and the judge won't hear me talk about X, Y, and Z, and whatever. Okay? I'll just tell that judge. You won't. You can't. You won't. You don't. The judges don't work like that. You don't get to filibuster the judge. You're expected when you go to court to know the rules of court. You're expected to know the rules of decorum, the local rules, how that particular county or city court does its thing, and the rules of evidence, the rules of procedure, it's sometimes called as well, separate set of rules. You're expected to know the rules of conduct in court. And if you don't know those, that can be against you. And if you think it's a small pamphlet, well, for example, the rules on hearsay in Virginia, and Virginia is no different here, there's something on the order of 824 rules just dealing with hearsay. Now, you don't really do much with that, those 870. Probably you use 12 or 15 of them for most of your time if you're practicing in court. And again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I want to make sure that's clear. But I am a practitioner in the court. I have defended myself, and I'll be speaking a lot about that and various cases. And I'm putting it in my book exactly what you can expect from the court, and I'm naming names so that you know exactly who the people are and exactly how they have behaved. These people are immortalized in transcripts as well as in my recollections and in my notes. So you don't get to go in and tell the judge what you want. There are certain rules, and unfortunately the judge may decide not to listen to you. Another matter is that truth matters. People think, well, I'll go in and I'll tell the truth, because we're all taught from the time we're little kids, we're going to tell the truth. And the truth will set us free, and all this other stuff that we're told. That's not really the issue. Remember, the law has nothing to do with justice necessarily, nothing to do with truth necessarily. You'll get people who will say, oh, no, that's not true. It's justice, it's fair, it's true. This is the truth. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If it happens to come into truth, or if it happens to give justice, wonderful. But it doesn't always do that. So don't go to court thinking you're going to get at the truth. You're not. It's about winning. No matter what they will tell you, that's what it's about. Somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. In my case, by cheating and lying and making up stories, they managed to take my daughter away from me simply because I asked the court for a remedy. I said, hey, court, I have this document. It says that both parents are supposed to behave a certain way. We're supposed to let each other have equal time or whatever range time is in the document. And one person, the mother, is preventing that from happening. Well, they have a lot of nifty ways that they manage to avoid actually doing what they don't want to do. And I'll be speaking about that at some time. But you will get a remedy. It will not be a remedy according to the law. Any agreement, prior agreement, argument, anything that the judge may or may not, you might think the judge remembers your case. They don't remember the case. Out of probably 12 or 15 judges I've had any experience with, whether knowing them professionally or personally, I only know one who actually took notes. None of them actually. And I know this because the judge would read the notes back and to refresh our recollection, and also to let both sides know that she was not going to be rolled by any nonsense, which I thought was a good thing. One of the things you need to be aware is that you think, well, the other side has to prove their case against you. Well, they don't necessarily have to prove their case. They only have to sound more believable. Judges have what's called discretion, and they use it as much as they possibly can. They get to decide who's telling the truth. By what? Whatever means they feel like. It really doesn't matter. You might think that evidence matters. Same thing. Your word, your testimony is considered evidence. In the case of Judge Lisa Bonder of Kemmler of the Alexandria Circuit Court, whom you may know when she was a defense attorney, and she defended Lorena Bobbitt of Lorena and John Bobbitt's fame in Manassas, Virginia. Judge Kemmler simply listened to both sides, and despite the mountain of evidence I had, she simply believed the mother. Our case, interestingly enough, was similar to theirs. My private parts were not cut off, as Lorena Bobbitt did. No, I meant I'm Anglo and she's Hispanic. Same type of thing there, and maybe that influenced Judge Kemmler's decision. It's as good as any other choice, because certainly logic, fairness, evidence, or justice or the truth had nothing to do with Judge Kemmler's decision. And finally, keep in mind that there are different standards at different times. If you're in civil court, very often the standard by which the judge is supposed to make a decision is called preponderance of the evidence. Okay? In other words, what does the evidence stacked up show? In a criminal case, the standard is supposed to be beyond a reasonable doubt. But don't misunderstand these. Rather than being hard and tough and clear markers and guidelines, they are not. All the items I've just said about the judge's discretion and what the judge wants to do in a particular case has far more bearing than what the law says, than what the civil or criminal standard of review, it's called, whether preponderance of the evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt, much more than any of those. And I can show you example after example after example where they basically threw that out the window and did what they were going to do all along. I hope that this is helpful. I'm sorry it's not happy and bright and warm and sunny news, but I think it's important that when you are looking at going into court, you know exactly how it really is. And ask your attorney. Ask your attorney about what I'm saying. Press the attorney hard, because sometimes attorneys, especially if they're on the prosecuting side, don't want to admit that it really works that way in their favor. Defense attorneys very often will tell you the truth because they're faced up against these issues all the time. And it's particularly acute in certain jurisdictions like the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I'll be pointing out some of these things as we go along. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again.